Jujutsu Kaisen has dozens of sorcerers with insane otherworldly powers that I'd be terrified to get into a fight with. But then there are two entities that stand out from the pack. Two of the most feared, yet well-renowned Jujutsu sorcerers in the manga are Satoru Gojo, the strongest sorcerer alive according to almost anybody, and Ryomen Sukuna, the king of curses. These two have been established as incredibly strong fighters from the beginning of the series, and they serve as a solid point of reference for what a strong Jujutsu sorcerer looks like in battle. Both of them have had several chances to show off their battle prowess, but never against someone that was quite on their level. And so we here at Plot Armor want to know, what would a fight between two of the most powerful sorcerers in existence look like? And more importantly, who would come out on top? So today we're going to be exploring what would happen if, or perhaps when, Gojo and Sukuna get into an all-out brawl. Context. Before getting into the hypothetical battle of the century, there is an important question that must be answered. Why exactly are Gojo and Sukuna considered to be some of the most powerful figures in the history of the Jujutsu world? Satoru Gojo was born into one of the three leading clans in Jujutsu society. He is the first member of the Gojo clan to inherit both the Limitless and Six Eyes techniques in 400 years. This basically set him up to be one of the most well-known sorcerers of his time, even without the tireless training to hone his skills. Limitless is the technique inherent to the Gojo clan. It essentially grants the user the ability to manipulate time and space. This technique has three components to it. The neutral infinity is what keeps attacks from hitting the user or neutralizes an opponent's technique. Curse technique Lapse Blue increases the output of curse energy to the point where it can implode an opponent's body with a direct hit. And curse technique Reversal Red is, like the name suggests, a reversal of infinity and allows the user to repel attacks away with double the curse energy output of blue. While the technique in its many forms are powerful enough on their own, the amount of curse energy required to use any form of Limitless makes it difficult to handle. Gojo's secret weapon is the Six Eyes, an even more rare inherited technique in the Gojo clan. It is so rare and so powerful that Kenjaku would spend centuries trying to eliminate those that have the power. Six Eyes doesn't just make Gojo look like a Furby, it will grant him a nearly infinite amount of curse energy. It also allows him to see the flow of curse energy and gives him an insane range of vision. This basically means he can perceive literally everything anywhere at any given moment. But perhaps the most terrifying thing about Gojo is his domain expansion, Unlimited Void. Speaking of everything, everywhere, and all at once, someone stuck in Unlimited Void is bombarded with non-stop information and stimuli for as long as it is activated. This leaves the victim catatonic once released, regardless of how long Gojo has activated the domain. It is nigh impossible to let anything get past Satoru Gojo, and equally as difficult to leave a fight with him unscathed. Much like Gojo, Sukuna has a pretty infamous origin story. As a human, he was one of the most feared sorcerers in Heian era Japan, known as the Golden Age of Jujutsu. Outside of the fact that he was a killing machine, the only knowledge about human Sukuna was that he had enough curse energy to classify him as a special great sorcerer by modern Jujutsu standards. This is why he became a cursed spirit when he died. However, compared to Rika Orimoto, the Queen of Curses who was brought back with immense love, Sukuna's curse energy is steeped in negative vibes. As a curse, we haven't seen much of Sukuna in terms of his curse technique. Most of his fights have been purely physical, and with only an infinitesimal portion of his power, 3 of his 5 battles, including his battle with Gojo, were done at less than a quarter of his potential strength. What we have seen from Sukuna has been pretty impressive regardless of his current limitations. Even Gojo had to put out a little effort to defeat a newly reincarnated Sukuna at 1/20th of his power. The current information about his curse technique seems to relate to his preference for hand-to-hand combat, with both his mantle and cleave being incredibly versatile for the Kruger-style slashing attacks. Sukuna also employs an incredibly strong series of fire-based attacks against Jogo during the Shibuya incident that end up killing one of the most visible secondary antagonists of the series. I believe this isn't Sukuna's curse technique. There is a chance Sukuna is somehow capable of copying other users' abilities, and the only reason he hasn't done it up until now is because he has been stuck at a quarter of his power. Jogo force-feeding Yuji 10 fingers doubled the amount of fighting strength Sukuna has, but his domain expansion Malevolent Shrine is the most menacing thing about the King of Curses by far. Unlike other domain expansions, Malevolent Shrine does not create a separate barrier, meaning once someone is caught in it, there is no way out unless they make a binding vow with Sukuna. It is also powerful enough to override other domain expansions, immediately making opponents unprotected from a wrathful king. Whether he's got a tiny fraction or the entirety of his full power, Ryomen Sukuna is not to be trifled with. But before we go any further, if you want to avoid being stuck in an unlimited void of anime content, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload, and smash that like button for some plot armor today. Where and how? Now that Gojo and Sukuna's reputations and powers are laid out, it is time to establish the current state of our fighters. At this point in the narrative, there is really no way the two can fight. Gojo is stuck in the personal hell that is the prison realm, and Sukuna has been dormant inside Yuji since defeating Mahoraga in the Shibuya incident. Obviously, both fighters have to be unrestrained and not trapped in a box to battle, so we have to get both of them in the same place at once. Sukuna is the easier of the two to release. Yuji either has to consume another finger, or accidentally release the beast with the binding vow the two made. Since Sukuna is 15 fingers or potentially 16 strong now, the chances he can take control of his vessel, regardless of his indomitable will, are presumably higher. I think that his aggressiveness might vary slightly depending on how he is released because it affects how present Yuji is in the fight. The binding vow has Yuji essentially non-present, while eating more fingers simply pushes our boy into the background. He's also been dormant for at least a month post Shibuya, which is the longest he has been quiet since he possessed Yuji. His sadistic tendencies have been tampered down for far too long, and we already know how ready he was to slaughter upon his release in Shibuya. I can only imagine how feral he'd be after seeing the strongest standing in front of him for a fight. Sukuna is still ready for a rumble, especially against a powerful opponent like Gojo. Gojo is a bit more difficult to free at this point. In the manga, there are only two ways to escape the prison realm: end your life, or find the back entrance and nullify the cursed energy of the box. I'm gonna just ignore the possibility of Gojo dying in the box since a dead Gojo can't fight. However, I think there is a possible third option for Gojo to release himself. Since the prison realm bars those stuck inside from using their cursed energy, if there was some way for Gojo to completely remove or even largely decrease his cursed energy output, he could escape. What grants Gojo immense amounts of cursed energy, and what made him a target for getting sealed in the first place, is his 6 eyes. If he were to intentionally blind himself, I think there is a small chance that the prison realm would register this as Gojo's death and he would be released. It would remove him from the position of the strongest, but it could be a quick way for him to leave the box. Regardless of how he gets out, Gojo's mental state might be a little worse for wear. We don't know exactly what the prison realm can do to a person's psyche, but I'm sure seeing his dead best friend possessed by an evil brain definitely made his mental health take a slight downturn. Despite its incredibly persistent egotistic persona, Gojo is still a human with regrets and empathy. At the start of the series, he claimed that he could defeat Sukuna at full strength, but after the events in Shibuya, I surmised that his resolve to kill Yuji to stop Sukuna might be weakened. World Star! So after all that build up, let's finally get to the fight. Well, more like fights. Since this is such an epic battle with so many unsolved variables, I thought creating a single fight scenario would be an incredible disservice. After countless hours of analysis and running trials in Super Smash Bros., I decided on 3 possible scenarios on how a Gojo vs Sukuna battle would play out. The assumed constants are going to be the location, the time, we'll call it post-culling game even though the arc is still ongoing, and the associated mental states. Sukuna wants to kick ass and take names, while Gojo is on edge from the circumstances of getting sealed. Battle 1 is what I am calling the Optimist scenario. It assumes Gojo is released from the box unscathed, presumably from either a cursed object nullifying the cursed energy, or by the mysterious Hanakurusu if Master Tengen's plan for the culling game plays out. Sukuna is released by Yuji consuming another finger, meaning, should things get too rowdy, there is a chance Sukuna can be subdued back into his little timeout bone pile. So we have a fully powered Gojo against a Sukuna that is not quite at his full strength, but close enough to still have a fighting chance. Still, the two have very different fighting styles, which adds a bit of more variability to the battle. Because of the nature of Limitless, especially Infinity, Gojo is a ranged fighter for both offense and defense. On the other hand, Sukuna seems to prefer close range, hand-to-hand combat, and doesn't seem to have a specific defensive fighting style. This might sound like an unstoppable force versus an immovable object situation, but really, Gojo probably has the upper hand. Basically, as long as Sukuna can't get close to Gojo, the strongest has the advantage. Because Infinity and Hollow Purple, Gojo has enough powerful defensive maneuvers to keep Sukuna's claws at more than arm's length. Should his opponent get too close, one blast of blue should put the cursed spirit down. The only slight snag in an uncontested win for Gojo is if Malevolent Shrine is activated immediately. Because Sukuna has total control of the size, he can decrease the radius of his domain to a size where he could land a blow on Gojo. However, Malevolent Shrine does not limit the cursed energy of the opponent trapped inside. If any domain expansion can beat Malevolent Shrine, it would be Unlimited Void. If Gojo just releases his domain expansion for a few seconds, I think Sukuna would at least be distracted enough to let down his guard. Between his ability to keep an opponent far enough away and the sheer power of some of his attacks, I think Gojo would win this one by a landslide. Battle 2 is tentatively called the Bad Ending. How Sukuna gets released in this scenario, either by Yuji eating a finger or by Yuji slipping up and activating the binding vow, doesn't really matter. He'll have the upper hand regardless. This is because in this scenario, Gojo blinds himself to get out of the prison realm. The 6 eyes are gone, and with it goes a lot of his advantages. His god tier vision, his nearly endless supply of cursed energy, and his mastery of Limitless. He still has Limitless, but he has to be careful when to use it or else his cursed energy will deplete. This means Infinity has to be used sparingly. and he's actually susceptible to Sukuna's slashing attacks. He also has to be careful with using his range attacks, blue and red, and basically can't use hollow purple at all. This whole battle is in Sukuna's carefully manicured hands. He can drag it out with a bunch of cleave attacks or cut it incredibly short by trapping Gojo in Malevolent Shrine. If he really wanted to, Sukuna could literally just light his opponent on fire. Without any consistent way to keep Sukuna at more than arm's length, Gojo is completely vulnerable to any attack the King of Curses might throw at him. While Gojo might be able to land a hit or two, this round goes to Sukuna by a landslide. However, probably the most evenly matched scenario is Battle 3, or as I'd like to call it, Psychological Warfare. Gojo is once again out of the prison realm unscathed and has his full range of powers. Sukuna additionally is at his full power. Somehow Yuji consumes the remaining 5 fingers, and Sukuna is completely in control of his vessel. Granted, I don't think this means he'll transform back into his original 4-arm form. The body and soul are 2 separate entities after all. But it does mean he can access his full arsenal of powers, including those Gojo doesn't know about. Regardless of how he looks after consuming all 20 fingers, a fully powered Sukuna is the closest thing to an evenly matched battle Gojo's had in decades. If Sukuna's curse technique at full strength is just cleave with an increased range or damage, Gojo's just going to have to increase the effectiveness of Infinity and make sure he doesn't get distracted. However, I think some of Sukuna's inherent curse technique might be close to Suguro Geto's curse manipulation. Both involve emulating a technique, but Sukuna picks them up by watching, while Geto has to actually consume a curse. Like I said before, his battle with Jogo was the first time he'd fought with the majority of his power, and the fact that he was able to launch fireballs immediately seems more like copying an opponent's technique rather than something inherent. Plus, curse techniques usually relate to one core element, and there's really no link between slashing attacks and long-range fire blasts. Basically, I think there's an opportunity for Sukuna to at least pick up on blue or red, which pose a threat to Gojo, especially because Sukuna doesn't have curse energy limitations either. On top of the possibility that Gojo can be fought with his own technique, there is the confirmed fact that a fully powered Sukuna doesn't have the influence of Yuji lingering in the back of his head, threatening to take back control. It is Sukuna at his full sadistic potential. I wouldn't put it past him to hold Yuji's body hostage in the same way he did during his battle with Megumi. He knows that Yuji is someone special to Gojo and would not be above psychological manipulation to guarantee a victory. If this battle happens to be pre-planned, Sukuna is also sadistic enough to temporarily ally with Kenjaku in Geto's body, not as backup, but for an added dose of distraction to bring his opponent to his knees. Gojo, who's probably been through psychological hell and back, would probably be more affected by Sukuna's brutal taunts now than earlier in the series, which might throw him off his game. I don't think it'd be enough for him to do something rash like switch off Infinity, but he'd definitely be less focused on the battle. This fight would probably come down to some absolutely brutal hand-to-hand combat, because each fighter's long-range attacks would probably cancel each other out. While Gojo's hand-to-hand combat is still stellar because he's literally good at everything, it's also how he received his only recorded defeat against Sorcerer killer Toji Fushiguro. To his credit, it was over a decade ago and he didn't have Infinity constantly turned on, so he's definitely got more of a chance now in close-range combat. He is still less practiced than Sukuna though, and Sukuna does have his claws to cause extra damage. This is definitely a fight that would rage for hours going into days on end. The deciding factor would be how Sukuna decides to mentally torture Gojo instead of how the two physically brawl. With a fully developed battle arsenal, no limitations from his vessel, and an innate knowledge of what makes Gojo squirm and what makes him horrifically guilty, I think that Sukuna would drag his way to victory. And so after all the analysis I've done between the manga, fan theories, and a lot of Super Smash Bros. Simulation trials, it looks like Sukuna will come out on top in this battle of the ages. But what do you think? Would Sukuna truly crush Gojo if or when the two go head to head? Let us know in the comments down below. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.